Toby. I am a body psychotherapist in London. Nice to see you all. I've called this brief talk and set of movements Reclaiming Our Animal Selves. It's about a preparation for meditation and how to peel back a layer in order to be more in touch with our body. I was going to talk about the autonomic nervous system just as a whole, but we decided not to replicate another talk. So I have sort of conceived of this like a bead, like a necklace of beads, in which each bead is a set of thoughts about a particular area, and the thoughts are linked by having something to do with the ANS, and which together lead into a movement routine, which is part of a wider set of movements I call Autonomic Wellness. So I think the beads are all areas that are important and relevant to us as either therapists or people struggling with chronic pain. I'm not going to have time to go into each area, but hopefully they should make sense because they're all connected. And the thread that these beads are strung on is an idea about reclaiming our animal selves. So that's hopefully what I'm going to try and express. Okay. Philosophers and wise men and women have asked us to know thyself. So what does it really mean to know thyself? Sometimes all sounds a bit cognitive, but isn't it also to feel and sense thyself? And this is where the word interoception is important, the sense of what's going on in one's body. Alexithymia is a general deficit of interoception. It's characterized as an inability to identify and describe one's emotions. But this doesn't have to be a fixed state. It is plastic to learning and unlearning. So I'm asking, to what extent are emotions physical sensations? And this has been a question that's been asked for a long time. 150 years ago, William James, the American psychologist, said, "Do I run away from the bear because I'm afraid? Or am I afraid because I run away from the bear?" How are we different from animals? We have the ability to reflect and project. And this potentially takes us further away from interoception, from developing the insight that our emotions possibly begin here, not here. And perhaps the sort of animals in the wild who are connected intimately with their own environment have that advantage. We like to feel that the way we act is a sort of autonomous top-down process. But I think particularly for those with chronic pain, know that our thoughts, feelings and moods are often hijacked from the bottom up. In fact, much of thought and feelings, prejudices and everything in between are bottom up. They start with a sensation. And I think insight meditation can teach you to feel the sensation in your body. That's at least the meditation I've practiced for 20 years or so, which is the Vipassana meditation, is all about feeling sensation, to sense it, but to try not to react to it, and to develop the insight that sensation is at the root of everything. Are there thoughts without sensation? Aristotle described humans as the communal animal, emphasizing society building as a central trait of human nature, and described us as a thought-bearer animal, a term that also may have inspired the species taxonomy, Homo sapiens, the wise hominid, and the bearer of thoughts. In my training as a body psychotherapist, there was an emphasis on relational therapy. Freud introduced the instincts and the drives, but it was the object relations school that really brought the relational psychotherapy into focus. And psychology has continued to build on this. We can't really exist without being in relation to others. Neuroscience has continued to show that when the brain is idle, it is in a relational mode. That's what they call the default network mode. We can't escape our relational selves, and all solitary pursuits like meditation must come to terms with that. And in a group like this, we can take advantage of the support of the group. I think this relational identity is encoded in our mesoderm, in our musculature. The muscles in our face and throat form with the vagus nerve, a complex which has been termed the social engagement system. It involves individual muscles that do individual things like eye movement, but working together creates a break on our sympathetic activity through social behaviors. Our relationships, for better or worse, shape and continue to shape us. So as much as this is about meditation, that's sort of where I focus. It's more about preparation for meditation. And I think that's why it's relevant for this group, which I understand is about movement therapies, dealing with chronic pain, fatigue, and fibromyalgia. It may be a bit of a generalization, but I think for me it's valuable to acknowledge that at the root of a lot of chronic fatigue and the like is some sort of nervous dysregulation. It could be some kind of psychoneuroimmunological activation or vagal suboptimization. And the driver might be many things. It could be attachment issues or Crohn's disease or quite possibly both, lots of possibilities. But what may be common and problematic is the ability to sit still and to observe the body-mind, to encourage stillness and to self-regulate. So asking people to meditate without preparation is at least problematic and at sometimes counterproductive. And I've seen that a lot, really, that there's a sort of, maybe I say a mantra of sort of, meditate, it's great, but I think sometimes that can be difficult, but also actually sort of damaging, or traumatic, maybe I say. So I think for me, exercise, it often focuses on the mesoderm, the muscles, but not necessarily on the ectoderm and the endoderm, the nerves and the vegetative system and the autonomic system. Of course, they're all related, and if you jog, you know that when that second wind comes in and all the endorphins start firing, there's some beautiful synchronization. But I think it's also possible to exercise and move without compassion to our vegetative and nervous system, because we can focus on the mesoderm and we can over-exercise and affect our adrenals and push ourselves, or we can just go through the motions without getting in touch with ourselves. But I think utilize mindfully, our muscles can help us get in touch with our autonomic self. And the breath is interesting because it's voluntary and autonomic. It's a good tool to use. In biodynamic psychotherapy, we call the diaphragm the gateway to the unconscious. And in some sense, it's subliminal. Belches, yawns, and forced deep inspirations and automatic stretches are kind of messages from the autonomic unconscious. I think the theory of individual muscles has come under scrutiny following the re-examination of connective tissue, which has been going on, for a while. Muscles are sort of spring-like, but the fascia deforms like a plastic bag, and it can give us insights on how to move mindfully. The connective tissue, which is highly innervated and surrounds all of our anatomy and even penetrates the cells, is part of the architecture which defines us. So those familiar with the concept of biotensegrity will appreciate that this vibrating, connected, intelligent body-mind we all possess is constantly feeding interoceptive data back and forth between every part. Finally, just say, because I know other people will talk about this in more detail, but I think another bead on this thread is the polyvagal system. And in a way that sort of disrupted the idea of the autonomic nervous system being like a seesaw. I certainly remember that when I was training initially, the idea that, sympathetic is bad and parasympathetic is good. But maybe that's the polyvagal theory. That was its interesting nuance, that it sort of disrupted that a bit. The old dorsal vagal branch is like a shutdown of the parasympathetic system, a freeze state or an immobilization. But it's important to be active in response to whatever is important, just as it's important to be able to switch into a state of relaxation when desirable. Also, sometimes it requires energy to relax, I think. There is nothing inherently bad or good about the sympathetic or parasympathetic branches of the ANS. So for me, autonomic wellness is the flexibility to move between dominant states within the ANS in response to external stimuli and needs. Meditation is a quiet reflection and acceptance of all the autonomic variation. I just end with a quote from T.S. Elliott. He says, "Teach us to care and not to care. Teach us to sit still." So now maybe I will invite us to move a bit. But maybe if I can ask you to stay sitting. I'm trying to read from my notes actually, and so hopefully I'll just switch back to full screen. So hopefully you can see me. Okay, 1 second. How do I do the speaker view? Carry, yes. Okay. So I just, in this few minutes we have, can't do a whole autonomic wellness sequence because it takes too long. But one thing I invite you to be aware of is those messages from the unconscious in the form of deep inspirations and yawns and burps and sneezes or whatever, because I think they're all welcome. And one guy who was quite interesting called Stanley Rosenberg, a cranial therapist, used a set of movements to kind of stimulate the autonomic system, and that's one I want to get started with. Please shout out if you can't see me. I haven't got the perfect setup, but hopefully we'll start with just sitting, and I'm going to ask you to follow what I do by placing your hands on the back of your head like this. This is normally done lying down, but it's fine to do standing or sitting. So hands on the back of the head, but don't brace too much. Make it fairly light. It should really just support your occiput. And the idea really is we look straight ahead. Don't move your head, but we'll start with the left side and look as far as is comfortable to one side and hold that. And I'm holding that and waiting for some kind of response from the autonomic system. For me, that's a deep inspiration, but it might be something else, as I mentioned, sometimes a yawn or something. And when you feel that, you can just come back to the center. If you don't feel that, don't worry. Hold it for 20 to 30 seconds and then come back, because sometimes it takes a bit of practice with these. But then go to the other side. Try again, looking as far to the right. Doesn't matter how far you go, but just try and take it as far as is comfortable. And wait for some kind of response. Again, for me, I have an inspiration, a deep inspiration, and I come back. Okay, so that's the sort of start of kind of firing up the autonomic system. As I say, don't worry if you didn't feel anything. There's a whole set of movements, and I can put something up about them, but they're kind of a good way to get started. There's the eyes in particular. I think there's so much there in the optic nerve and just the muscles around the eyes, which, as I said, are part of this group of muscles which makes the social engagement system. And if anyone has a yawn or anything, I encourage you just to share it with the group, because as we all know, the yawns are infectious. And I think that serves an evolutionary purpose. Groups sitting around yawning and yawning together and was some kind of social bonding. So next, and I think we can stay sitting like this, I just want to encourage a little bit of self-massage. So I'll just say, massage stimulates the endorphins that we talked about with the joggers, as well as the endocannabinoids, so these kind of natural painkillers. Touch is soothing, and it can be self-soothing. I think, I realized for myself, because I do a lot of body work, but I don't do much on myself. And actually it was with the Zoom thing we've all been experiencing over the last month that I started to do more of that. So I invite you to close your eyes and focus on somewhere that calls to you. It can be a place of pain, it might be a place of pleasure, it might be neither. And give it some compassionate touch. I'm going to focus on the upper half of my body because that's what I know you can see in the screen, but it doesn't have to be. So let's close our eyes, and for 30 seconds, just find somewhere. It'd be nice to do the whole body, but we've only got a short time. So just somewhere that calls to you, and just give that some self-massage in whatever way you know how to do that. And I'm just going to invite you to stay with that place. Keep your hand where it is, and just to open your eyes and look around the group and see that, everyone has pain in different places, but someone might have pain or pleasure or whatever it was in the same place as you, and see that how we are connected in this way. So maybe now we can just get moving a little bit. I'm just going to try and adjust my furniture so you can see me a little bit. Okay. So the first thing I want to do is just a little bit of what I call shaking or vibrating. And I think, if you have in your gym one of these vibration plates, I think they're great. I think the body responds so well to vibration going through it. But this is something we can just do anywhere. And for me, it's better when the movement is smaller, almost imperceptible, but it goes through the whole of you. So, you're shaking through your feet, but your head is moving as well. But that's not easy to just do the first time. So if you have to do something that's, quite visible and quite big movement, that's okay. But at least do it and then try and make it a little bit smaller. So the vibrations are just quite fast, but imperceptible almost. And this really is vibrating the fascia, and the filaments of the fascia actually penetrate right down into the cell. So this vibration is really at a cellular level, and that's something I do it when I do Tai Chi or yoga. I just use the vibrations along with the movements, and I think get some wonderful results from that. Okay. The next thing I want to do is just something in Tai Chi they call awakening the Chi. Hopefully I think you can all see me from the waist up. And really, I'm just moving my arms up and down. And the trick is to try and do this with the breath. So really everyone goes at their own pace. I may be breathing a bit faster because I'm talking. You might be going quite a lot slower. So, we'll only do 7 or 8, but just try and get them with the pace of your own breath. And then if you want to bring in more interoception, you can bring in the legs as well, because then there's more to do with balance, and that increases the information coming from the body. So same thing, but just bringing in the legs, and the trick is to move the legs back down slowly. So now I want to bring in the mind and the idea of active meditation, which sort of allows us to kind of get out of our mental states. So really this is another Tai Chi exercise, and it's just called gathering stuff and letting it go. So I'm just going to, hopefully you can see me, but I'm just going to kind of reach down. It's going to be a nice stretch, and try and pick stuff up from the floor, and try and visualize that this is stuff that I'm trying to get rid of, stuff that's happened today, stuff that's happened from the week. Just try and pick some of this stuff up, take a nice breath in, and let it go. And you can give a little noise as well. So just getting rid of some of that stuff, some of that energy, some of that accumulated baggage. So let's just do that twice more. So just a nice stretch in the body while kind of visualizing, picking up stuff that you want to get rid of. Breathing in, raising that up, letting it go. One more time. Breathing in. So, last two exercises, I want to explore how we are holding our body. You know, and if we are startled, the body responds by going into a startle reflex. When the stress goes away, we tend to return to normal. But if there are multiple stresses, then the connective tissue acts to fix that startle position over time. Sometimes we are not aware that we're kind of holding that startle position. So these are just two exercises that complement each other. The first is the green light reflex, or the call to action. And in babies, one of their first reflexes at 4 to 5 months is where they raise their head for the first time and say, I want to do something. So let's give that a go. We raise our heads and look towards the horizon. Sorry. And at the same time, we arch our back, and the back muscles contract. The belly falls forward. The shoulders are pinned back. The buttocks clench. The back is contracted into a bow. The weight is on the heels. We're looking at the horizon. We're out in the world. And if you just hold that for a few seconds and then come out of it slowly, as you come out of it, just feel what's tense and what's letting go. So that's the green light reflex. And this is a sense of joy in seeking, going out into the world. And then I want us to try the opposite, the red light reflex. The red light reflex, which is the primary response to fear. So let's stand again, knees bent, and the belly muscles are shorten, tighten. The rib cage and the pubic bone come together. The shoulders roll inward and forward. The head and arms roll inward, face forward. So you're kind of hunched up. Notice your breathing in this posture, in this position. Try to breathe, try to take deep breaths, and maybe try and take a few steps and feel where you're constricted. And then in the same way, just come out of that and feel what's held and what's releasing. And one thing you can do is just to stretch between those two. Call it, you can call it pandiculation, think of how a cat stretches. So stretch from the green light reflex to the red light in between them. Okay, and just coming to an end, I just want to do a final little set of exercises. You can sit down again now. Best to do it if you have a chair. If not, a mat is fine. So sitting down, rock back and forwards on your sit bones. And when you feel the heaviest, when you feel the most weight, stop and just give a little shake. And then move side to side and just try and find balance there. Put your hands on your lower ribs, so on the back of your body, on your lower ribs, and just say, let it go. Let it go and allow the breath to come. Let's just have a couple of breaths there. And now put your hands on your tummy, near where the diaphragm is, and say the same thing. Let it go and allow the breath. The next part would be to tense the muscles, but we can do this through the whole body. We don't really have time, so just take one muscle, maybe the same one that we massaged, just where it's calling to you, and tense that muscle or that muscle group and release it. Now have your arms down and your mouth open and say ah, big ah. Rub the eyes and say ah as well. Ah, and if you feel a yawn coming, that's great. Just let that come. Now, scrunch every muscle that's in your face. Tighten all the muscles from the eyes, the forehead, every muscle you can in your face. Hold that and release it. Stick your tongue out as far as you can. Ah. And hold that. And now with your tongue, do everything you can within your mouth. So move your tongue around your teeth, the front teeth and the back teeth. Just put your tongue into every position within your mouth. Next, make little tensions within your diaphragm. Maybe it's not easy for everyone to access that, but imagine like a baby crying, little baby that wants to cry but can't quite cry, and they have that sort of little gasps of air. And if you know where the diaphragm is and you can access that, that's what we're trying to hit. The diaphragm, those little pulses in the diaphragm. And now a big stretch, and try and stimulate that sense of wanting to yawn. And if you can yawn, that's fantastic, because that's coming straight from the autonomic unconscious. Okay. And then the last thing, just tighten the anus, tighten the sphincter, and hold it. And hold it for as long as you can. Maybe for 5, 6, 7 seconds. And then release. And now do the same thing again, but lift one of your legs while you're holding that, and try and straighten that leg. And just as long as it don't go through any pain, but as long as that's comfortable. And then repeat with the other leg. Tighten the anus, and then lift the knee and straighten the leg. And now just feel your sit bones again and have a little bounce. And now this is when we would start to meditate, or when I would start to meditate. This is how I learned to meditate. We don't have time for that now, so thank you very much.
Do you want to?
Do you have any questions?
Actually, yes, I do. I have a question about yawning. I don't know if you could help me up with that. I have noticed that there are two types of yawning, at least as much as I can find the difference. And the one is that when you're really tired and it goes all the way home and it kind of has a closure to it. And then there's this de-stressing yawning that it happened to me right now, where it's kind of like you feel the urge to yawn and you yawn, but there's no closure to this yawn.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, I was wondering if you would probably know something more about it.
I don't know if I know the sort of technical physiology of that. I know I've experienced, I know you describe it well, you know, it's like an incompleted yawn. It can be quite frustrating, can't it? I think one way you can actually get better, because actually yawning is a wonderful tool to get more autonomically fit, you know. And one way, if you want to get better at completing those yawns, it's a little complicated, but when what you do is you try and take a little breath within the yawn. So you kind of, when you do get a full completed yawn, try and practice taking breaths within the yawn. And it sounds a bit complicated, but if you do that, and if you Google some stuff about that, you get very good at being more of an efficient yawner.
Great, thank you. I will write that down. That's great advice. Thank you.
All right. Is there anybody else who has a short question before we hand over to Lisa?
Hi, Toby. I really enjoyed that. I just was wondering, is there somewhere I was trying to write notes in between? Is that like any kind of a standard sequence to lead into meditation that I could find somewhere else?
No, not at all. I don't think so. I took it from a bunch of different psychotherapists, and our school was like a Norwegian school, you know, and the last bit I did with it was from a Norwegian lady she's what we'd call a dame in her own country in Norway, Herr Berit Bunken. She's sort of in her 90s now, and she still comes and teaches. And she thinks of these sort of being kind of free diaphragms. And so when you're doing that stuff with the tongue, it's kind of working on this diaphragm, and then obviously the diaphragm we all know, and then actually she goes into a lot of stuff about the genital area and the anus as the sort of third or diaphragm. So yeah, I mean, I've botched a lot of things together, but Herr Berit Bunken, but there's nothing in English. So yeah, I do have a sequence that I've done, so I'll put my details if you want. I can send you something. I'm not aware of anything that's got that as a whole.
I would appreciate that, even just a sort of, a starting point. It's really very useful.
Yeah, okay.
I can build on. Thank you.
I'll put my details. Let me know. That sphinx, the clench is called Ashwina Munda, is it?
Ashwini Mudra.
Mm-hmm. So it's from the yoga tradition as well, but I only know it through these Norwegian body psychotherapists. So yeah, but I'll post something about it.